Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. First, before we do anything, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Always need more volunteers to share their dreams. You can support my work, donation links below, buy a t-shirt, etc. Also, 11 currently available books of historical dream literature, working on book 12 and simultaneous audiobook release. That is the housekeeping. Try to get that out of the way as soon as possible. Today, we have our friend Susan Schwartz, which we've only spoken briefly beforehand, and I literally don't know what to say about you. So I like to let our guests introduce themselves. What would you like people to know about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a Jungian analyst, and I've been one for quite a long time. And that means, in case anyone is not familiar with Jung, it means really a respect for the unconscious, personally and collectively. And one of the ways one can very easily find out about what is going on unconsciously and related to conscious life is through dreams. So in my work, I oftentimes will ask people, what have you dreamt? And if they haven't, I will suggest ways for them to remember their dreams.
Very cool. Very cool. And there's a recent phenomenon that's happening to me where I'm having a higher frequency of guests that are educated beyond my level. I've got a bachelor's in psychology. I worked in emergency psych for 20 years, so I've dealt with a lot of helping people get stabilized in hospitals. And the dream thing was a hobby for years, and I discovered a talent for it. But there is also people who have real specialized training in this that have been doing it much longer than I have. And this is going to seem weird, me bringing a knowledgeable expert on to kind of flip the tables on that in a way and say, I'm going to offer them something they couldn't get on their own. In some ways, yes, because it's that second opinion. It's that external observer looking in at something maybe you're too close to see yourself that can always be useful, even with someone such as myself who's not educated to the same level as my guests. So as awkward as it makes me feel to say have someone who is superior to my own training on, I think I can still be of benefit. And I hope of course, my guests feel the same.
Yes, but I would say that the exact process, excuse me, that you describe is what happens in analysis and therapy. So it takes saying the dream and both people looking at it and then sharing that witnessing perspective, which makes sense of the dream. You can't really make sense of your own dreams. Well, you can to a point, but you really need that witnesser or the outside observer to give it additional life, and to figure out, does it fit or not. But I have a question to ask you.
Sure.
Which, when you were working in the emergency place, I would imagine that a lot of those people had dreams maybe before, anticipating their emergency, afterwards as a way of working out their emergency. I mean, none of which you might have really known, but it's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I'm sure if I had been more able to have longer conversations. There were a few dream analyses I did with people on the units, just happened to come up. This was never something I initiated with every client on purpose, but someone will say, wow, I had some funky dreams last night. They really left me disturbed. And so I would want to say, tell me about it. I got some time. Let's see if we can figure out what it means to you and how you can make use of it. That's what I try and do with these in general. And it's always nice too, before I forget the thought, to have someone whose expertise I would respect come on and say, that process you do intuitively that you don't even know where it comes from. This is just what you do. That's what it is. That's like, I arrived at this completely accidentally, just through the process of knowing that listening and the collaborative process is necessary. It's just what I do.
Well, the collaborative process is what is important. You can't just look up the dream symbols on Google,
right?
And think that's the answer, because people do that. And okay, but what about the symbol hits you? And that's what counts. That's what counts.
I actually did an episode, and I feel There's two camps of people. People kind of into the supernatural side of things that maybe are more inclined to the dream symbolism books, thinking there's one and only always message to be received from specific symbols. I'm on the other camp, and I try not to denigrate that side because some people it's what they're into, and I'm not here to wag my finger at them necessarily. But I did do an episode of what I call my ABC series, augury, bibliomancy, and chaos, the ABCs of dream interpretations. I love little clever sayings. Anyway, I think it was episode 16, somewhere around there, where I looked at a dream analysis I did with a young woman and how we arrived at one conclusion about her circumstances based on a conversation. And then I went and I said, let's look at this from the dream symbolism book angle. What would that tell her? And I demonstrated, I think, clearly in that format, about a half an hour video of it would have given her significantly wrong answers and made her life worse had she chosen to follow the advice given. And I wanted to just at least illustrate to people, be very careful with these things because they can send you the wrong way. And this is what I was getting to with the idea of I'm hoping that my process and my engagement with people in general is to their benefit, which is where I was going with that originally before my autistic tangent.
But I think there's a point. But I also think that the intuition helps guide us, and so that we know whatever our primary function is, we know that we are listening to ourselves. If the dream interpretation is off, one, it will repeat, so you get it differently, and also there will be like a bad feeling. Nah, I don't think that was right. Yeah. And so I always listen to when people say, you know what, I don't think we got it. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, let's try it again. Because you don't want it to be in stone. Dreams are not in stone.
Yeah. And even coming to a satisfactory answer isn't always the right answer necessarily, or the only answer, or the only way to look at it. Sometimes it's manipulating an object and you look at it from a different angle and you're like, oh, I saw something I didn't see before.
Exactly.
Well, I feel like I could just spend the whole episode talking to you about dreams and process, and we're not actually getting into an interpretation, which I hope is what most people join us to see. So if you said you had a couple of dreams that you've noted of your own, and we were going to try and look at one of them.
These are not my dreams. So no, I didn't bring my dreams.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
No, I didn't, because yeah.
This would be a first for me, looking at other people's dreams. It's hard to get that personal resonance from someone. Go ahead.
Okay, so these dreams are actually taken from a book that I did on the absent father effect on daughters, father desire, father wounds.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm taking dreams that I had in that book, and I'm going to say them to you. They are different people, but the theme is kind of similar.
Okay, fair enough. This will be an interesting experiment for me. And it's okay if we got wires crossed. Sometimes I don't communicate very clearly. And
well, maybe I didn't either. But
that's okay. I'm up for something different. I generally just roll with whatever comes my way. So this will be hey, you people watching out there, it's something I've never done, and we'll see what I can do with it.
We'll see what happens. But that's exactly
wonderful challenge.
That's what happens with dreams. People come and bring a dream. It should always be a challenge, but it shouldn't be easy. So
certainly, if they don't understand it, getting to a place where we can both make sense of it. That's exactly wonderful puzzle solving. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
So here's the dream. The father is like Hitler. Yeah. He had 3 daughters, and one was suicidal. She is under his thumb. Myself and another sister cry as she will kill herself, and he doesn't care. She is a poet. He trashes her work. She ate glass. He will not change.
Okay. Change. So my process would normally be at this point to say, okay, we're going to stop and we're going to go right back to the beginning of the dream. We're going to say, where did you first appear? What do you notice around you? What setting are you in? Are there other people there? This looks like it goes through many discrete phases, very well condensed into kind of primary iconography of different things. I mean, father being Hitler it's the very iconic of evil authoritarian, someone capable of great harm, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you want to just interpret, or do you want me to add?
Maybe let me go through. I don't know what's the best way to do. If you've got something to add, throw it in there. I don't want to ramble too much.
Well,
so that was just my first impression of the first icon. Yeah.
So let's hear everything that you interpret, and then I'll add, and we'll go back and forth.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. So that would be the first thing there, and then if I could read my own handwriting, there were three. I think I wrote down three sisters, and one of them.
No, three daughters.
No, that's white. It's not sisters. It's daughters, and that one of them was suicidal.
Yes.
What I would be asking the dreamer at that point was, do you have two other siblings that are, or are these invented persons? Do they exist, or are they representative of something else? Which one was suicidal? Was it you? Were any of them you? I'd be asking those questions. I quoted the idea of being under his thumb. So very much not just the potential of an evil authoritarian, but the enactment, the experience of being controlled by this dominating force, such that, the person they would rather be dead than exist in that condition. The idea of poetry, trying to express themselves, express emotion, comes to mind. And he's trashing her work. He's telling her, what you think, what you feel has no value to me. Eating glass. I'd spend some time on that too. That's very interesting. It's ingesting something dangerous, something that's painful to consume. Ideas, attitudes from the authoritarian parent, and that he is unchangeable. He's an immutable stone. Well, I'd look for what are the client's representations they associate with won't change. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was set in stone, someone who's very, could withstand the elements, so to speak. So those would be my initial impression, and that's what I would be doing is making these little carrots as I go to come back through and trying to tease out more elements of that during the process. But please, what?
Yeah. So how I normally, the Jungian approach actually is that all the aspects of the dream have something to do with oneself. Mm. So the figures are of their different sexuality, their gender, their force, their energy are parts of oneself. So when you said about the Hitler energy and the evil, we could imagine, what is that like to live with that inside of oneself? Mm. It means one's going to be killed. And well, I mean, he killed everybody, so anyone, doesn't matter. The suicidal one would actually be, I think, a part of this dreamer who was a woman. So it would be a part of her, I would think, who actually is suicidal. So you got 2/3 that want to live, but 1/3 doesn't. That's pretty.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty serious. And she's going to kill herself. She's going to, again, which she? Is that her, or is it one of the other daughters? The eating glass, I felt, was like, the mouth, the expressiveness is going to be cut at.
Yeah.
Cut out. And it's such a masochistic kind of image that I would say with that person, what is going on that you are damaging yourself? Mm-hmm. And The issue at the end is, it's always interesting what the beginning is and the end. So it begins with Hitler, who never changed, and it ends with he won't change.
Yeah.
So the reality is, what do you need to learn about this dream, about your own personal father, about the collective father, like you said, the patriarchal authoritarian, that something that you have bought yourself, or something inside that is resistant to change?
Interesting. And this is good too, looking at, say, we discussed, I don't know if it was a moment ago while we were recording or beforehand, but the idea of my process being intuitive, and I don't even know where it comes from. And so there are, if people ask me, what's your perspective? I say eclectic, because there's a very much a Freudian framework. There's a Jungian framework. There are even other frameworks to look at dreams from within. So mine's a bit of a mixed bag. I go to the personal relation to the symbolic. And so this is why I would say, take the idea of, if I suggested to the person, do you have siblings? And they were to say, no, these were people that don't, well, did you recognize them? Did they have any characteristics that would identify them as people and then that might open the door to say, are they aspects of yourself in a particular way? And I would, and I wouldn't say, this is what I was saying earlier too, is that there's, just because I make a suggestion, please don't take, to dreamers, say, please don't take me as an expert, like my suggestion is necessarily the right path. I do a lot of what I call rattling doorknobs. Sometimes they come open, sometimes they don't. And if a person, as you were saying, doesn't feel it, they're like, there's no harmonics, there's no resonance with that idea. Move on, let it go, look at it from a different angle. Yeah.
Or there could also be that, as you said, your intuitive flash on it might be something that person can't accept at the time.
Yeah.
It might be right on intuitively, and maybe that person will think about it, and not that they have to come to it, but it set up a spark inside of them. That's that place in between that makes the dream more alive.
Yeah, I hope that happens too. Is like, as I say, I'm happy to be wrong if it gets us where we're going. I'm also happy to be contradicted by the dreamer, even if I am right, because sometimes I just said it and now it's going to percolate, and they'll make use of it, or they won't when they're ready. There's a time and a place for things to be introduced, and if someone's not ready, trying to force it into place against significant resistance is very often more damaging than just letting it be. We'll circle back around. We'll get to it eventually. It'll make sense to you when it does. You'll be able to use it at the right time, hopefully. But someone's got to say it. Someone's got to just put it out there and let you deal with it as you will.
I agree with you. I wanted to, as you were speaking, I was thinking there's something also about the culture that each person comes from that they bring into their dreams.
Yeah.
So we all bring a different, maybe a socioeconomic culture, a ethnic culture, a religious culture, a country culture, all kinds of cultures. So the question would be, there's a lot of evil in the United States. How come this person chose Hitler? So what is that? What does that reveal? It's like questions, why would that be? And again, what does it remind them of? I don't know. Maybe it was their father.
Could have been. Maybe he had the little thin mustache and he really looked like him with the haircut and everything. I mean, it could have been that powerful and direct. Probably not necessarily, but.
Wait a second. I actually thought with this dreamer, I would agree with you. Although the father didn't look like Hitler, the father was like Hitler.
Very much behaved, yeah.
Exactly, like what you're saying, and the person really needed to, this woman really needed to come to terms with the fact that he was that bad.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times where, say, someone has extremely conflicted feelings. They want to honor thy mother and father, and they want to express, I've been abused. And this conflict between wishing someone was different and trying to accept that they are not, and that they're worse than other people see them. And there's the family and social dynamics, and admitting you've been a victim when you're trying to push that away. because you don't want to see yourself that way. A lot of these things, and then you get this image of, well, I can imagine Hitler. It's not going to have my dad's face. It's going to be literally Hitler, but inside I know who it is. Inside I know what I'm really trying to say to myself, if I can look at it honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I think, that when people talk about their dreams and they get, whether they get corroboration or not, the witnessing allows it to come out of a secret, especially if people have been abused.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's where, so I did a whole, I have multiple I'm experimenting with a lot of stuff on my channel. So I've got my ABC series. I actually did one about cultural reference specifically. And so I've spoken to, say, a Muslim Iranian gal, and her unique view of her dream was from within that culture. Spoke to a Christian Russian gentleman, and it had church iconography in there, and that was important to him. Spoke to another gal from, I want to say, Nigeria. I can't remember exactly, but her dream featured leopards, and that was associated with royalty in her culture. So knowing where people are coming from, what these icons mean to them personally is going to make all the difference in the dream. And you just got to ask. You say, well, what does that mean to you? And try and draw that out if you can. I had a whole nother point that I was going to build on top of that, but I lost it.
Okay. But I do think it's important, especially, in our era now, that we really are very conscious. And, people in the United States oftentimes miss that the United States is just not one homogeneous story.
Yeah.
It is really a complex mixture, and transgenerationally. So the dream, actually, by talking about Hitler was what, how many years ago? 70, 80 years ago. So transgenerationally, what has come down about the father, which also is kind of interesting, or about daughters, the transgenerational. So there's a little message in here about that too. I think if we look for bunches of clues, we find some answers.
Yeah. Oh, and I just remembered my other point too, which also relates to what you're saying. It's all a great conversation. I hope everyone's enjoying it. I love this. This is good. So another feature on my channel is just what I call I like using little Latin phrases. In Cantus Phylacterium, the place I keep my words. Second episode was, what is a dream wizard? Why do I call myself a wizard? What do I think a wizard is? And it has to do with speaking magic words. And I think one thing I forgot to put in that episode was that the act of speaking certain things aloud has a magic. It calls it into existence. It opens channels in our mind and understanding that wouldn't exist without that magic of the act of speaking itself. That's why I tell people, if things are bothering you, talk about it, or at least write it down. Get it out of your head onto paper, just out of your head in some way. So it's not locked in a box. Now it's physically in the world, and you can deal with it in a different way that's not possible until you do that.
It's true. It's true. And the other thing that the dream does, in addition to what you're saying, is when you write it down, or you record it, or you put it somewhere in your computer or your phone, it actually slows the process down so that then you reflect on it. Then you reflect. It's kind of what you're saying. Get it out, but also look at it, reflect on it, and honor it. I think we live in a culture that doesn't honor dreams, which is what you're saying is important to do. And I would totally agree with you. Let's honor the dream world. This is not some false world. I mean, we spend hours dreaming. Yeah. Believe it, because it's just as believable as, when the sun is out.
Yeah. One third of our life, if you're getting healthy sleep, hopefully 8 hours ish, is spent in this alternate state of reality, in a way, altered state of consciousness, certainly. But then it's like I tell people, okay, so I edit historical dream literature too. And recently, I think it was book 11, The Psychology of Dreams, fantastic book. I've got like 14 hours of an audiobook out there. Please listen to that, all of you folks. Recorded it myself, hopefully getting better. I digress. He was talking about a quote that I gave that, again, just came to intuitively, the idea that the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, all these things keep moving, processing. They do what they do while we are asleep. No different with the brain. Brain never stops. Neurons constantly firing. Consciousness, we say, is when we're aware in some ways of our thought process, the action of the mind. But it's going on in sleep too. So if we ignore our dreams completely or dismiss them, discount their validity or their utility, we're missing 1/3 of our entire thought process about things. Granted, you can remember your dreams, which I have a big problem with. I probably 5 dreams in my entire life that I can actually remember. Although I'm aware of having dreamed, nothing sticks. Maybe I have all my thoughts. My theory is I have all my thoughts constantly during the day and I'm hyper aware of them. So it's just repeating things I've already thought about in my sleep. That's my theory of why I don't remember it. It's not important enough to remember because I've already had those thoughts. Maybe not.
But no, I would say maybe not. And I would say also that there might be, so this happens, that we have things that we are not yet ready to know about, or we have not opened the door. So when I said to you at the beginning, I talk to people and say, remember, all you have to do is say, I want to remember my dreams. And you repeat that mantra every single night and your dreams come. They start coming in little fragments and then they get bigger and bigger. It's like the psyche is open. If your psyche is open all during the day, it's open all during the night, because that's what you just said. And because you honor dreams, which is so super, then in fact, you have more information happening at night, I would imagine, that has maybe takes one to completely another level. Because, you know, the dreams, again, just like you said, they're like what's happening at night and during the daytime. They give us even more information.
Yeah. And as much as they can appear to be disguised sometimes or very, very symbolic, they're often more honest. We just have to understand what the symbol is representing. And then we get a more, which is funny, and actually a less filtered view of our thoughts on that particular icon. We get it in its true form, so to speak. How we really conceptualize it is what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you. You could say that dreams are natural. You can't lie about them. You can't really cheat on them. They're your natural self, whether you want to know it or not. So, you know, you might as well let it in. The other thing that you said, I just wanted to go back to,
Sure.
about the body. So in this dream, the woman ate glass, so she's going to hurt her mouth. So that's part of her body. But the dreams, I think, are amazing because they tell people how to heal.
Yeah.
So, this dream, I think, was telling this woman, in a way, about her own healing. She had to come to a certain reality, which was painful, like eating glass.
Yeah.
And she's going to have to do something about that awful father figure that lives inside of her. Otherwise, her body's going to be hurt all the way down.
Yeah. And it could very iconically be saying, you're going to have to do something as unpleasant as chewing on glass to get this solved, possibly. Or
to feel the extreme nature of it, because it's pretty extreme.
Yeah, that is a super extreme experience too. I can't even watch that kind of stuff. Like, I get nauseous watching surgery videos and those television shows that were on, I don't know, 10 whatever years ago, where they would do the novelty of sideshow acts and the people that ate light bulbs. Now, maybe it was candy glass, but I could not watch it. And of course they would insist it's all real, and but the illusion was enough for me to say I can't even watch that in real life. So I'm going
to read you. I'm going to read another person's dream.
Yeah. Let's do another one.
Okay. But I just wanted to go to what you had said about illusion. So many people think dreams are just illusion. Totally not. They're the mirror of oneself. So they're hardly illusion.
It's a tremendous reality.
Yeah. Okay. So these dreams actually are all by women, because I took them from my book. But let me say, we could ask, it certainly could apply to men or however people identify. And it always depends on how they're going to interpret it anyway. So, okay, so here's another one. These are not actually happy dreams, I must say. So She dreamt her father, again father, put his hand on her thigh so forcefully it burned her flesh to the bone. Branded, she could not rise against the resistance of his hand. Later, she thought about filling the wound with concrete. How could this wound heal? Concrete would make her flesh inflexible, heavy, and non-human.
Okay. And people see me trying to catch up with my writing. That's another thing. The second pass of my typical process is that I'm going to miss something. They're going to go, wait, that happened before that, and I wrote it down wrong. I get a lot of clarification from people. And another thing that I thought immediately about, say, father, hand on thigh, I thought this feels icky. This feels like sexual abuse. And there's two things I don't do for the purposes of my entertainment. This is education, but it's also entertainment. I do not put people's rape or child abuse experiences on display. So I would never, I would advise people, and I have advised people, I appreciate you reaching out. I would love to help you. I think you should get into professional counseling privately and not put this material. I won't put this material on my program. So those are like two broad areas I just don't get into. But since we're talking about it academically as a review of someone else, not your personal dream, that was my initial impression of like, what would I do with that? If this suddenly came out and I was recording with someone, I would probably stop and say, let's talk about getting you into counseling and not talk about this here. I'd say, thanks for coming. I didn't know we were going to go there. But again, academically. So that was my first thought. If I were to do this privately or professionally with that person, I maybe wouldn't emphasize that point right off the bat. I might say, have you had experiences like this in real life? I would just throw it out there saying, is this iconic of something else, or is this an expression of something you went through? That because that's two different directions of looking at it. So clarifying that, if they said, yeah, I was abused by my father or by a male role model, trusted person, burned to the bone, this unalterable experience that cut through layers of physical flesh right to the very center of the person. It's cut to the bone. We have those that iconic word description in that form for a reason. Something not a superficial scratch, but really serious. Branded. The idea of branding is permanent. This is never going to go away, and to the point where it is holding me down. And that could be physically, I was held down in real life, thus my experience, but this is holding me back from progressing. This is something that's always going to be pressing on me in some way. Filling it with concrete. The concrete thing is, so you want to heal the wound, and that she actually went on to say something about healing the wound and questioning whether concrete was the right way to do it. But the idea of filling with concrete is, if I patch this up, I'm going to use something stronger than flesh, something that cannot be burned or melted through. I'm going to make this wound stronger than it ever was before. But the inflexibility. But if I turn myself to stone, so to speak, am I even human anymore? Am I handling this in a way that's going to hurt me worse than the experience? Those are all my initial thoughts.
So I wanted to add, because we're doing kind of a joint deal.
Yes.
So one of the things I find interesting is the association that in a word, I'm going to use a word you had used earlier, and that's symbolism. So if you follow back in the tales, the stories, the mythologies of the world, we see all the same symbols that we see in people's dreams. So for instance, his hand on her thigh could relate to like the Grail legend. So the Grail King had a wound in the thigh.
The Fisher King. Right? I was just reading about that. I had to do what is it? A footnote in a recent book to describe that to the reader, because maybe people might not know the Arthurian legend, and I didn't know what that reference was.
Yeah, but it means that, in fact, he's not strong enough in the thigh. He needs to gain strength in his leg, and the legs hold us up.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole dream, even though it might relate to abuse, for this person, it actually, they never mentioned abuse. But you know, some people don't mention it. Yeah. I did say as well, after I repeated the dream to you, this was a dream that repeated for 20 years. Wow. So the issue of the thigh wound or the being branded was not solved. It kept repeating, yeah. And saying, wait a second, you haven't found your strength yet. You are still under the thumb or branded by the father. And what also is interesting is, and I just add this, I have given this dream to a people in China, and one of those, here's culture, one of the women commented, in China, concrete is made out of mud, and that represents the earth and the feminine. So her interpretation was that she's going to fill her wound with something that would be more on the side of the feminine. Sure. And not, it was quite interesting. So her culture, completely different from ours, in an absolutely different interpretation.
Oh yeah. And that goes to show too that, like I was saying before, is I'm happy to be wrong. And never would I be more happy to be wrong than to say, were you abused? And they go, oh, no, that's nothing to do with that. And let's say they're being honest. Okay, let's take a completely different tack on that and look at it in a different direction. What does a thigh wound mean to you in this iconic sense? Yeah. So,
exactly. But you see, I think your intuition on the abuse, well, if the father is branding the daughter, she was abused emotionally.
Sure, may not have been physical. Yeah,
taken away her whole sense of herself, and her body, again, another one. The body is damaged.
Yep. Yeah, so, for sure. Those body damage in general, and that goes to, we were talking about the danger of looking up what does it mean to lose my teeth in a dream.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are very specific things that dream books or websites would say. But is it true for this individual? It's a iconic of body damage, so to speak. But it could be if you associate teeth with biting, and or you have, say, a traumatic experience where you fought with your brother and you bit him deeply and you had to go to the ER, and you felt guilty for the rest of your life. Now teeth falling out is like, I wish I wasn't as aggressive with my relationships, because that personal representation connects it to your childhood and a traumatic experience where you had significant regret. And we go in a completely different direction than the dream books, because it's what it means to that individual based on their experience.
Always, it's what it means to that person. But also, there is that connection into the past and connect to the present and what it is going to mean for the future. So I think the past is incredibly important. It's like what you'd said. So when did you start to feel like overpowered by the father? I mean, it could have been like when they were 5.
Yeah. Or it could have been a more recent experience of, if it was, say, so this child abuse is one thing, and then a recent, say, rape or something. If it relates specifically to that, again, I stop. I say we can't do this for entertainment purposes. I'd be happy to briefly talk with you about getting you connected to a psychiatrist, but not gonna do that here. And again, that's the importance of listening. Really, what do I tell people? It's like I might be the kind of more of a midwife for symbolic discovery rather than an authority on dream meaning. That's. Yeah.
But somebody who says I'm an authority on dream meaning is maybe being pretty rigid.
Yeah, only slightly. Yeah.
And it doesn't allow the authority of the other person to
Yeah,
be. So, no, I hope we're not authorities. We're just making space
for
for
sure. Sure.
for
And
the
that second opinion and that external viewpoint. I mean, there's all kinds of wonderful stuff. I love it. What did I do back in college? We did a little fishbowl exercise where we had the people in a small group and everyone else around the outside. They had a conversation about something. They were trying to figure out some solution to a task, and their awareness of their interactions, and then the people sitting around on the outside looking in saying, when you said that, he didn't understand what you were saying, and the other person responded to that, and you thought they were, and you got angry at them because they weren't listening to you. And it's like, wow, that communication breakdown was so obvious to the people on the outside, and the people in it experiencing it, having their own thoughts and trying to express them, completely missed it. That There's a lot of experiences like that throughout my life that stuck with me, where it's I probably could not have told you that yesterday, but our conversation today just brought it to mind. That
yeah.
external perspective. Yeah.
Well, but I think that's what the discovery of dreams is to find the internal and external perspective of what's going on. The other thing that I oftentimes do is that I'll ask people, well, how did you feel in the dream? And how are you feeling saying the dream? And how did you feel when you wrote it down? Because those could all be different things.
Yeah. And these are the technical aspects of my own process that I want to get better at. As much as I try to follow my intuition, and it has steered me well, I think, being self-critical and wanting to grow and progress, there's a lot of things I miss, a lot of things I don't ask when I could have or should have, that hopefully someday I will have enough experience doing what I do intuitively that I can actually look back on it from the outside and say, here's my missed opportunities. Here's what I want to add in the future. And that's exactly one of them, is like, what did it feel like in the dream? I almost always try to remember that. What does it feel like telling me now? I don't think I've ever asked that. That's very important.
It is, because somebody will have a different experience telling you the dream than they would have telling me the dream.
Sure.
Because it would just be a different interaction.
Yeah.
So it's important to go, how did you feel when you said that? Or sometimes I will ask, well, did you tell your partner this dream? Because they dreamt about the partner. Well, maybe they did, or maybe they didn't.
That'll say something too. Yeah, this is embarrassing to them, or you feel they would mock you, or you'd feel it would cause tension. Why didn't you share it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it adds another layer onto the dream. And again, I think with this one, because it was a recurrent dream, it was saying how pivotal it was and important for this woman. The reason I mentioned the Grail legend is that he couldn't become the king with the wound to the thigh. So, or he was the king. He couldn't function. I know what it was. The land didn't grow until the thigh wound healed. And it didn't heal until he got the right sword. I mean, it's such a talk about symbols.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd love those stories for exactly that reason. It's like, yeah, you got to have the right tool for the job and the person in the right condition to implement the tool effectively, to have the result of generating in the kingdom, so to speak. All these layers. I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So did you want me to do another dream?
We could. I had one more thought I wanted to throw in there, and so I had another episode. I think it might have been episode 12. I called it Soul Searching. It was a combat vet who was having recurring dreams where he would go into the backyard of this party, and there were these shadow creatures. Very interesting. The shadow that would not allow him to enter another area that he was trying to get into to have a look at something, and he never. They beat him up, so there was a physical altercation with them, but he never felt like it was a malicious beating. It was like we're going to physically stop you from going to observe this area. Okay, long story short on that one, the process of analyzing the dream with me, I heard back from him later, and almost immediately, like the next day, his relationship with those creatures changed from our analysis, and they were now letting him get closer to looking at what he was being prevented from seeing. I haven't heard from him in a while, but this is what I say to folks too, is that how do you know you got it right, so to speak? Well, did something useful come out of it? But did your recurring dreams change or stop? Because as this is another thing I've come to intuitively, and it's nice to have a real expert here telling me my intuitive process is catching on to something useful. I tell folks, yeah, if we got it right, we will solve the puzzle in a way that the recurring theme is trying to show you about yourself, about what you are struggling to understand. Because we obsess over things until we get the answer, and then once we've got the answer, we can move on finally, and we don't need the recurring dream anymore.
No, but because we have one answer, which is going to lead to another question, which will lead to another answer. What you're saying about this guy is he was kind of stuck, and in his probably a shock response, PTSD.
Yeah.
And by being able to bring it out and be heard, it moved something. So he could move into a place that had been prevented by him. I mean, he was preventing it himself. He wasn't enough to go there. But you also mentioned the word shadow, and I haven't used any real Jungian terms. And the reason I don't is that I don't when I look at dreams with people, because I find it distancing. And if they will bring up, so the shadow, ego, animus, anima, whatever, I will say, well, we can look at those words, but how do they relate to you in your dream? I think it's important that it becomes human and close to one's soul.
Yeah. Yeah, really. And overly, I had the discussion or participated in a discussion on Twitter recently where it was talking about therapists using excessive quantities of technical language and clients that come in using technical language. The interesting complications that can come around that. And yeah, one thing to look at it is, are you intellectually distancing yourself from your emotions by using technical terms? There's also the flip side of it is maybe you are, say someone like me, I go into therapy, I'm like, well, I know a few things, so I'm going to use the technical terms and we can just connect on that level because this is what I believe it is. This is how I'm expressing what my understanding is based on this term. And I can give you my own definition of it or textbook. So it's an interesting thing when you say get a professional talking to another professional and using professional language. It might mean something different than talking to a layperson who has a pop culture understanding of some things. Like people have a difficult time differentiating, say, psychopathy from sociopathy. And they think of the iconic sociopath as a psychopath because that's just how they connected those dots, but they're really separate things. So, yeah.
I think that the point of dreams is not to be distant, but it's to create connection. So that's also why I don't use terms. And if people ask me, I say, but we want to get close to you, not to the terms. You can read the book. Go read the book, right?
For sure. Yeah. And in this person's dreams, the idea that they were shadow people, I wouldn't want to jump to the conclusion, the shadow, as in Jungian shadow.
Not necessarily.
No, to him, who knows? He'd probably never heard of that. And that's one of my benefits, too, of going with, say, an intuitive process on a lot of things. I hope I don't use a lot of technical language. Sometimes it pops out. It's just how I talk about some things. But I don't bring a fixed perspective or necessarily a specific framework to what angle I'm going to approach specific symbols or the uncovering of symbols. Now I'm second guessing myself and saying maybe I do, but it's unconscious and I should be aware of that.
It could be, but there also could be a place. So sometimes I will say, your dream sounds like a fairy tale. Or it sounds like the myth of whatever. And they might say, well, I don't know that. And I'll say, well, look it up. See, is it not? we'll talk about it again. So I think the again is another thing that I wanted to add
Oh
in
yeah,
addition to fairy tales, movies. Sounds like that movie. Did you see it? Or it sounds like a book. Or so people feel connected to the world, and they're not alone with their own dreams.
for sure.
They're really connected.
Yeah, and I spoke to a guy. All these memories are coming back. His dream was he was in a video game, a specific video game, and we talked about that game and how it functions and what that iconography meant to him. And he was a warrior in armor trying to get into a castle, and he had to fight these vampires. And all of these little symbols were a specific type of experience. We can watch the episode, but a specific type of experience over a certain period of time, and what he was reflecting on about that, and how he characterized the people involved in it, and what his goal was at the end of it. That was a fascinating experience. I love going into these things blind. I tell people, don't tell me anything about the dream. I'm going to hear it for the first time. We're going to just roll with it and figure it out. And because that I find that discovery process fascinating to me.
Yeah. So in relation to what you just said, his video game feeling, story, etc., sounds like the Arthurian legend, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So here's our unconscious collectively through a modern person bringing it up and doing in the video game what King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table had to do, I don't know, in the Middle Ages. So we are so connected to each other. It's beautiful. And I think it comes out in dreams, that amazing connection.
Well, I have a tremendous respect. I mean, Jung is one of my favorite guys. As much as so interesting tangent too is like I think Freud gets a lot more criticism, derogation, whatever thesaurus words.
Yeah.
He gets pooped on too much because he was wrong about some things and whatever. But the fact that he set the stage for a lot of the things that we just accept as necessarily true, people forget that. But I also love that Jung's more leaning into the collective unconscious mythological representations of common human experience. Everybody, if you're a human, you breathe. And so breathing means not necessarily the same thing to all of us, but it is the same experience that we can all relate to.
Exactly.
That's what I love about dreams in general is everybody, whether you remember them or not, like me, but everybody dreams. We all sleep. These are things that's why I can talk to a guy in Russia and a gal in Iran and a guy in Hong Kong and a Canadian, and no matter where you are on the world, if you are a person capable of human speech with me, we're going to find something in common and something we can both understand in your dream experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. So should I do one more dream?
Yeah, it depends on your time. I've got just shy of an hour on the recorded portion here. So if you want to keep going, we're good. We can do one more.
I'll do one more because it relates to a frustration in love. And I think that love is quite important, and relationships come through dreams and are very important. They tell where there are the problems and where there are the solutions as well, as all dreams do.
For sure.
So this also is a woman who had been remained in quite a long marriage in which she was unhappy. And that's why she came. And she did not have many dreams, but this was one of them. And this, again, is a recurrent one for many years, not just recurrent, twice, but recurrent over 10, 15 years. And in the dream, she is like in an Escher painting, Escher, black and white, but mechanistic, black and white mechanistic painting. And she is on one side of the painting, and the man that she has loved for 30 years, the real man she loved, is on the other side of the painting. And the point of the dream is that she is trying to get to him. It's not clear that he's trying to get to her, but she is trying to get to him. And she never can, because there are obstacles in the way. the dream ends on this interesting note. Her feeling was, she didn't, in a way, she didn't really understand, because she didn't want the truth of the dream to be acknowledged by her. So that was her dream.
So you said the feeling she ended with was one of confusion, or lack of understanding? Is that how you characterized it? Or?
I think it was more that she didn't want to acknowledge the truth of the dream.
Okay. All right. Well, where would I go with that? I would talk a bit about the painting. What did you see? What was it like to be in this painting? Was it so I'd say I know the one about the stairs that are going at all funky angles.
That's it. That's the one.
That's the one. And yeah, I would spend we would first we'd go through it, and I'd try and walk through her process. I like to so what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get a story arc for the dream. Where does it begin? Where does it end? What's the complete thought being expressed? But that arc involves a journey, which is the imagination of taking steps, literal or metaphorical, in the dream. So where did you go? Did you climb this set of stairs? I mean, the other thing popped into my head is I say, did you see the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly? There is a scene there where she's trying to reach the baby, to rescue the baby from the Goblin King, and every time she runs around a corner, the baby's somewhere else, upside down, defying gravity, and the Goblin King's over here singing a song trying to seduce her. I would go, introduce those kind of tangents to, because if they did, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's very much related. Did you see that movie as a kid? Does this, what does that say? And the idea of mechanistic machines have no emotion. This is a very cold, sterile, clockwork environment. It's not, and black and white. There's no color. There's no vibrancy. So you're not evoking strong emotions. Very, dead, almost like a dead. I get a dead feeling out of this black and white grayscale. It's a place you don't want to be. A place that's confusing you. A place that seems designed to frustrate your goals. Those are all the things that pop into my head. I try and tease that out a little bit. She's on one side, he's on the other. They're not going through this maze together. This isn't the maze of life, which we all have to navigate. This is an obstacle literally between them, keeping them apart, is what it feels like to me. And this person that she's looking for is, as you said, or maybe as she quoted, but the real man that that she thought she married 30 years ago. What happened to him? Where is he? Why can't I find him? Why are we separated by this distance of some kind? This confusing mess and obstacles. So maybe she's tried different things in real life to reestablish a connection, to navigate this maze, and they have been unsuccessful. She's been frustrated, blocked at every turn. And getting around to that idea at the very end that she maybe didn't want to know the answer. I mean, she probably had a preferred answer, and what she suspected was the actual truth was not the answer she wanted. And so she's looking at it like, I'd rather not confront that reality and have to accept it. I'd rather stay confused. If I'm confused, there's hope. If I don't understand what it means, I don't have to accept the reality. That's where I would go with all those things.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, actually, because in reality, I think that's why the dream repeated, because she didn't want to accept what the dream was telling her, and that he was not available. Although he was her first love, the person that she was with was not her first love. And what was really in the way of her getting love was her own lack of emotion. What you had said about the dream, it's like the Escher painting was her. So if different parts of the painting are one's self, soul, reaction to the world, she couldn't access her own emotion to find what was opposite to her, which would be the man that she loved.
Yeah.
So,
And I hope I had it in my mind, and I was trying not to let it influence my descriptions. So it's weird. It's a weird balance between the objective and the subjective here. So I've got what I'm inspired to think about something is going to be coming from me, and I can only make suggestions. They resonate or they don't. Happy to be wrong. But I was thinking and trying not to say it looked like she thought he was the emotionally unavailable one. And it turns out from your own collaboration with this person, she was the one expressing her own inner mechanistic lack of emotional availability as this environment she couldn't navigate to get out of, to make a connection. I love that.
yeah, but I think that you're kind of the thing that was knocking on your head was the thing that was really true. One, I don't think she knew how to love or how to love another or how to love somebody who is different than her. So they're on different sides of the painting. Yeah. And not knowing somebody outside who's different, but not knowing how to love herself inside, the different parts inside. So the whole dream is about love, but rather unrequited and frustrated. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. I love that. What I try to look for and what I hope to achieve is, and you can see it in a lot of my videos. I start to say something, or I present an angle, or I ask a question, and the person starts going, and they're suddenly lost in that moment of epiphany where they're like, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop right there. You had a moment. Tell me what did you just think? And then they go, and it's like the floodgates open, and suddenly like the whole dream makes sense. And they're like, that's it. That's why. And I just gave myself chills imagining I was having that moment with someone, because that's kind of that's why I do this. I'm like, I want to help someone achieve that, because that's so satisfying to me.
Yeah,
to get there.
And what you describe is that release, which is a part of love. But for this woman and in her dream, she's in a picture frame.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That it's boundaried and really boundaried. You can't get out of the frame.
It's almost like nothing exists outside. The frame is the edge. That's it. This is your world.
That's it.
Oh.
So the flow that you described was something that she could not get to. And that flow relates to love, of course.
Yeah. I'd like to think that's what I'm expressing when I help people. The satisfaction I experience from helping people is, my form of love for the world, for humanity, for the person I'm interacting with. That's what I enjoy.
Yes.
Good deal. Well, we got 3. Again, this has been a first time experience for me, like just discussing the analysis of dreams in general, not working with a specific individual's dreams in that moment. But we got something, I think, uniquely interesting out of it. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe this is what I should be doing more often, more just interviews with people. I kind of think I don't have enough interesting things to say, or that I'm just going to start repeating myself if I try and do an hour-long episode every week about dreams rather than a dream. But we'll see. I'm open to changing my style.
Let me just say that, of course, that's what dreams do. They open us to different parts of ourselves and the world. So what you thought was going to happen didn't happen, but something else happened.
Yeah.
Which is the dream, isn't it?
For real. Well, that relates to, everyone go watch episode 30 of my ABC little series, a little 10-minute clip of just the last gentleman I talked to about the story we experience and where we put a period on it. And it depends on how we interpret it. Is it a comedy or a tragedy? Well, is the story over? What's next? What happens next? And unexpected occurrences. I didn't expect this today, and I could have just said, "Oh, I'm not talking to this person. They don't have a dream for me." But I said, "Let's see what happens." And it's been an enjoyable experience for me.
Me too. Me too. Thank you so much, Benjamin. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
good deal. And I want to say, let's do this once again. We'll wrap up the things. We've got Susan Schwartz, PhD, and that's I didn't mention it at the beginning. It's Susan Schwartz PhD.com, and that's Schwartz SCHWARTZ. Find her on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. And you said you had a book. What was the title of that again?
The book is The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, Father Desire, Father Wounds. And these dreams will be found in that book.
That is great. I appreciate having you here. I'm just going to do the housekeeping. Hey, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Links below. I got some books of my own, recreations of historical dream literature. And yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode of Dreamscapes. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.